Welcome to Starbound, where every star tells a story. Today, Captain Veer and the crew decide to show humanity's history of violence and pain, as Krill puts it, makes us more than willing to brave any dangers to save another alien species. And yes, again, Krill is very anxious about all of this. Check if you're subscribed today, because if you're not, do it. It is totally free. But now, let's get into the story. The conference hall for the Galactic Assembly was awash in chaos. Captain Veer sat wide-eyed next to Krill. Veer was the temporary representative for Earth, while the actual ambassador was away. The Assembly members argued over each other, raised voices becoming even more agitated than the ones before.
Order! Order, I say!
A loud hammering broke through the noise, and the gathered Assembly took to their seats, eyes wide with fright. The chairman folded his posterior appendages to the front.
I will have order! Panic will do nothing for us, as it seems the Gromms world has been overrun by a virulent plague. Unfortunately, we are not sure of the exact nature of the disease. Before their scientists could come to us with their discovery, all communications had gone dark. We fear we may have lost them. There is nothing we can do.
That's not right. The entire assembly hall turned to look at the human. Krill sunk behind the desk in embarrassment.
You have something to say, human?
Captain Veer looked awkwardly down at the desk for a moment before taking a deep breath and standing up. There we go.
Well, aren't you gonna send someone? The CDC or a hazmat team? You can't just leave them to die out there, can you? Not if there's something that can be done.
The entire hall rumbled with assent to the human's words. The chairman leaned back, eyeing the human.
Send an audio medium to do what? Also, while we're at it, tell me then, what makes you qualified to make such suggestions?
The hall grumbled again.
Well, I come from a world that has a ton of plagues and diseases, as you know. The Black Plague, Spanish influenza, smallpox, the coronavirus, bird flu, to just name a few. And every time that happened, someone came to help. Take Ebola, for example. A hemorrhagic fever originating near the Ebola River, as the name suggests. It causes internal bleeding with fever. It is so contagious that you can catch it through contact with bodily fluids from dead bodies and through contact with the air. It has somewhere between a 50 to 90% fatality rate without treatment. And despite that, when outbreaks happen, we don't just leave those people to die. Volunteer doctors and nurses went in with hazmat suits to take care of those people. Some of them died, some of them caught the disease, and others saved a lot of lives.
The room was surprisingly quiet. Krill was surprised too. They knew humans to be a warlike species, but they hadn't known them to be so caring, to risk death to help those who may not be saved.
A touching story, Captain. But how does that help us?
Captain Veer crossed his arms.
If I can contact Earth and find someone who is willing to help, I will personally fly them in myself to provide security.
Why did you agree to this? Krill wondered uneasily, watching as the captain and the rest of the volunteer medical team began strapping on their hazmat uniforms. Behind his clear plastic mask, the captain grinned, fogging up the glass face.
Because someone's got to do it. And besides, humans have the best immune systems this side of the galaxy.
Krill grumbled slightly.
Maybe to Earth diseases, which are disgusting, but not to alien diseases.
I thought you were a surgeon, not an infectious disease specialist.
I still went to medical school,
Krill grumbled.
Now remember, Captain, stay safe and keep clean. Make sure to follow any and all decontamination procedures. Don't touch anything if you don't have to. Keep your feet on so I can see what's going on. Maybe I can help. Also, remember to keep your
respirator on and gloves on at all times. Yes, Krill, I am not stupid. I don't want to die either.
Next to him, the other volunteers from his crew were strapping on their weapons, making ready for entry. Krill was still nervous, watching them board the shuttle and, through the cameras, their descent towards the Gromm homeworld. All around the world, other crews would be doing the same thing.
Approaching the first settlement at about 23 degrees west, there seems to be no signs of life so far.
Krill watched as the captain stepped around a strange planet and continued walking as he narrated for them. The feed wasn't great, so it would be a help.
No movement, no alarms, nothing.
They moved over a rise and made their way down another hill, reaching the settlement in about 20 minutes, having parked themselves at a good distance from the settlement.
Looks like we have our first body,
the captain said grimly, crouching down and peering with his helmet cam at the shriveled corpse, dried into a husk under the sun.
This thing looks fucking mummified.
The captain mumbled, walking in a wide circle around the body to get it from all angles. Krill had to agree with the captain's assessment. The average Gromm was about 3 times the size of that body, with considerable mucous tissue covering most of its body. If it had died out in the sun, it was likely it had just dehydrated there. One of the medical team began taking samples from the corpse as the rest moved closer to one of the buildings. Captain Veer took point next to the rest of his team, protecting the medical staff as they softly shoved the door open.
Ugh, it's fucking disgusting,
one of them muttered. The captain made a noise in the back of his throat before saying,
"Oh, shit. I don't know if you can all see, but the room is absolutely covered in slime."
With the medical team, they ventured into the room. It was dark enough Krill had trouble seeing, but the captain's narration kept him aware.
There are at least 10, maybe 12 bodies in here, all rested in pools of slime. Looks like it's splattered on the walls. There's even some on the ceiling. I can feel it through my boots. He crouched down next to one of the bodies and ran a quick scan. This one appears to be dead.
Krill squirmed a little in his seat at the disgusting sight. Bulging eyes and a flaccid expression like the creature had just been deflated somehow.
"I got a live one!"
someone called. The captain turned his helmet to look, and they all rushed over to a body in the corner. The creature was barely alive, eyes rolling back against its chapped skin.
"Water!"
it pleaded. Someone, heeding the plea, left the room and came in with a bucket filled to the brim with water. The creature had no real mouth to drink like a human, so instead they dumped the bucket of water over the creature's deflated form. Immediately it began to look better, perking up and swelling to a proper size. It took a gasping breath, but seemed too sick to do much more than that. Immediately it began oozing at a furious pace.
"What the hell?"
the captain muttered. Krill pressed closer to the screen. He had never seen anything like it. The average Gromm didn't produce more than a quart of slime per day, but it was quickly losing water, even as they watched. The humans began an immediate procedure in helping the creature, filling another tub full of water and then dumping the Gromm into it, covering themselves in slime during the process. The idea seemed to be working, though it would only be a temporary solution. They continued on from there, going from house to house, finding many dead, some still clinging to life, and all in need of water. Captain Veer kept track of everything he saw and everything the medical professionals pointed out. He went into most of the houses first and cleared each room before allowing others to follow him. They were taking a look at one of the bodies when it happened. It was dark and eerie. The house appeared to have been painted in the slime. No lights were on, and there were a few windows. Captain Veer was scanning one of the subjects when it happened. The Gromms sat up and made a horrible screeching noise. Veer leaped back and tipped something over. Krill heard the tearing, and then the cursing. The feed cut out. Krill sat at the console, shaking, body racked with pain. He was sure the captain's suit had been breached, and he had been exposed to the pathogen. Second hands reported that he had been quarantined and was being observed. Symptoms had already begun to appear, though the specifics were kept to a minimum. Just then, the camera turned on and the captain appeared in the feed. He was smiling, but looked shaky. The plastic of the tent around him revealed a single entrance, a bed, a bucket, and a few other supplies.
"Well, I've been exposed to whatever this thing is. Whatever it is, it's fast acting. He reached up to wipe his eyes. About 3 hours after exposure, my nose started to run, and my eyes started to water.
He swallowed and wiped his mouth.
I'm not feeling anything else. No fever, no nausea, no sore throat. So perhaps it won't be that bad. I'll keep you updated.
Krill sat, furiously examining the samples that he'd been given, trying to figure out what exactly the pathogen's purpose was. He wasn't an expert in this area, but he knew enough that he might be able to help. Behind him, the feed clicked on. The captain sat there looking like an absolute mess. He was sniffling and wiping at his face every few seconds. His hair was disheveled, and his clothes were damp.
So, it's getting worse.
He wiped his face, arm coming away covered in stringy slime.
It's like I was sprayed with CS gas, or ate a ghost pepper without the burning.
Tears trickled down his face in a steady stream, and as he spoke, it sounded like he was trying to speak past a mouthful of water.
I'm covered in my own slime. The medical team has been using me for its samples. The rest of the Gromm appear to be stabilizing. As long as you can keep them in water, they seem all right, but we keep having to refill the water because they use it so fast. A few others are showing signs of improvement, but thousands of more have died.
He wiped at his face again.
And I have run out of tissues for the 10th time now.
The captain leaned against the edge of the frame. His cheeks were sunk and his eyes were ringed with bags. He was no longer wearing his soaked shirt. He wiped his face in vain.
Well, we have a name for it. Viral hyperactive exocytosis. I just call it the slime. Sounds cooler anyway.
He leaned over and spit into the bucket.
Which means that it's a virus that causes hyperactivity in the exterior mucous membranes. So on the Gromm, who have mucous membranes covering their bodies, it's almost a death sentence. They produce mucus until they have no water left to do so, and then they dry up. For humans, it also attacks exterior mucous membranes.
He wiped at his head.
Luckily, it doesn't seem to affect the lungs or the intestines, but
he motioned to himself.
As you can see, it attacks the eyes, the nose, the mouth, and, well, there are a few other places, but I'll let you use whatever medical knowledge you have to guess those.
He sighed.
I've stopped wearing clothes because I have nothing dry left.
He held up his arm.
As you might know, saliva and other mucus is about 90% water, so I am excessively dehydrated. They've started a wide-bore IV on me just to keep up with the water loss. I haven't peed in almost 24 hours. I'm dizzy, and I keep forgetting what I'm supposed to say. Since they gave me the IV, I've been feeling a little bit better. My skin is dry, I feel cold, and they're worried about organ failure if I continue to lose water. Oh, also I have a massive headache.
Captain Veer stepped aboard the ship 2 weeks later wearing dry clothes and looking relatively chipper. The planetary crisis for the Gromm had been reduced by the brave humans who had volunteered to come and aid those that were left alive. Millions had died in the plague, but with excessive amounts of water the virus had run its course. Anyone and everyone who received sufficient care during that time survived and recovered, including Captain Veer. Certain settlements had figured this trick out before their brethren and had taken to the water as soon as the outbreak had shown the symptoms that it did. They found other settlements that had not been touched by the plague, but they were often far outside city limits and had no real way to contact anyone. Many of the Grom would remain permanently affected by the disease, causing a dysregulation of their usual slime production. Disease-free Veer was back to his normal self, and had decided that your average runny nose was nothing compared to the slime. A runny nose didn't usually cause dehydration, organ failure, and headaches, and muscle cramps. Krill, to himself, was very impressed with the humans. It hadn't taken very long for Veer to find his volunteers, and no one had thought twice about helping an entirely different race. They had come in on the hundreds and saved an entire planet from the brink of extinction, risking their own lives in the process. At least 25 humans out of the hundreds sent had been infected, and all had survived without a continuing issue. No other race sent volunteer envoys onto the face of the Grom planet. No other species suffered the sickness. It was humans, and humans alone, willing to risk death to save a species not their own. Humans are a strange race, bred in war and shaped by pain, and so they fear nothing. They don't fear sickness or death, but they believe in survival. This idea is ingrained so deeply that even against logic, they will risk their own lives to lift up the lives of others.